Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ian Miller. Tonight, we're joined by editor of 13th Dimension, Dan Greenfield, and of course, my very good friend and co-writer, Eric Elliott, who has done Batman Meets Godzilla and co-wrote Batman Enigma with me and Paul Brian McCoy. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ian.
I am so honored to have you both on the show, just talking about Batman and all things comics.
When you sent me the message,
What else is there to talk about?
exactly. When you sent me the message, anybody who knows me, if you ask me to talk about comics, I'll do it anywhere. So it's hard to shut me up, as you may find. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and I've said to you, before the show started, I was a fan of your site for a number of years now. You do great articles, great research, and you talk about comics that people don't really talk about, which I think is fascinating.
Well, it's funny. It didn't. It's something that kind of made it up as I went along. It started back in 2013. Ironically. That's not where the name came from, but it was 2013. But yeah, it was, it took a while to kind of get our footing. And what I ultimately found that what was resonating the most with readers is just simply writing about stuff that I love. And then getting involved with people who, now we have about, 12, 13, 14 regular contributors. At one point I was the kind of the chief cook and bottle washer, but now it's grown into something, really what I'd wanted, what I'd always hoped for, but never really thought, wasn't really sure it would ever happen. And it's really a place to indulge the kind of stuff that I love, and when people respond to that, then that just encourages me to go down that road. And what's great about having all of the contributors that write for the site on a regular basis or do art for the site on a regular basis is that we're all sort of from that world. So they'll come up with things that I didn't think of, or they'll come up with ideas or story. And it's been a tremendous, not only just an experience to be able to do it, but for me, it's also been a great learning experience. There's so much I've learned from the things that people have posted at the site, people like Paul Kupperberg and Franco and Bill Morrison. We now have regular weekly columnists on virtually five out of 7 days. I got to find someone whose name ends with a W for Wednesday and ends with a th for Thursday, because I'm kind of committed to the bid at this point. Morrison Mondays.
Is that an OCD thing?
Well, I do have OCD, as most comic book collectors do, so it wouldn't surprise me. But it started with Sunday Funnies with Kerry Callan, which is not at all alliterative.
Yes.
And it went from there to Morrison Mondays, and then from that point, it just kind of caught on. So now we've got Morrison Mondays, Des Pop Tuesdays with Des Taylor, Franco's Free for All Fridays with Franco, the comic book artist Eisenhower, and Scott Shaw, who has been around forever. He does Scott Shaw Saturdays, and he's brought his old Oddball Comics column, which he's done as like live events. He's one of the founders of San Diego Comic-Con, creator of Captain Carrot, and so he's one of our most recent. I can't say hire, because the thing that I joke about is that we're probably the only socialist comic book site in the world, and by that I don't mean the politics. What I do mean is the fact that everybody gets paid exactly the same, including me, which is nothing. There's I don't take ads, and it is.
You hear that, kids?
I operate. I know, right? I operate at a loss. It's a total incomplete passion project. So what that's done is actually, in the literal sense, afforded me the opportunity to bring on people, because they know that I'm not making money off of their work, so they do it because they love being a part of it. And so having comic book professionals, and having gotten to know comic book professionals who've written for the site, whether it's guest columnists on occasion or regulars, that's been absolutely the best part of doing this.
Yeah, because again, you learn a lot of the history. You also learn about the background behind the makings of some of the comic stories that that stand the test of time.
Yeah, I mean Paul Kupperberg, who's been, he kind of joined the site during COVID, and it was kind of his COVID hobby, I think, because he was when he first started, he was writing like I think 2 to 3 times a week, because we all had this time, we all had this
Yeah.
extra time, and that was sort of a turning point for the website because he brought a level that I wanted to really explore, but I could. I'm just a guy. I'm just a dude who has a website. I'm not a comic book professional. I'm a comic book fan, and I just put a website together because I felt an urge to do so. I wasn't alone in getting that started. My co-founder is a guy named Cliff Galbraith, but he and I went our separate ways about 2 years in, very amicably. It was just, it just made sense. But getting someone like Paul, who's been in the comic book industry since the 70s
Mm.
and
Yeah,
was
I grew
in the
up on Paul.
fanzine, yeah, and it was in the fanzine scene before that. I mean, this guy is in the very literal sense, a comic book lifer, and to have his insight
Yeah,
and to have his stories and his connections and his knowledge is incredibly enriching to me as a reader and also as a publisher and as an editor. And I really think that, and I thank Paul this, and he jokes, he laughs whenever I say this, but I feel like the site kind of turned a corner when he joined the site, because after him, then all of a sudden, I more people started to join, and it opened up doors, and so now it's I used to have to explain what the site was, and now I just mention it, and I'm I still have to pinch myself, of course, but it's a lot easier to get to get noticed for things and to get access to things than I could say in
sure.
2013.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
I was
interesting.
hoping
I
you'd bring
actually
up
met.
Paul.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was hoping you'd bring up Paul so I could bring out my ambush bug. So like Paul
I like
scripted the
that.
first appearance of Ambush Bug, and he also wrote some of my favorite vigilante issues. So that's a huge win to have him on your site contributing in the mass amount that he does. He must. I mean, obviously he does it for love.
Yeah.
Yeah, he writes now a couple times a month, like every other week, and his 200th column, which he's already written, is coming up in probably in June at the rate that he's going. So he was actually tracking the number of columns that he's written. So it's been about 200 columns that he's done in the last 5 years. Um, but we have plenty, a lot of people like Jim Beard, Scott Tipton, Walt Grogan, Chris
Yeah,
Franklin, Pete Stone, Neil
Yeah.
Adams' son-in-law, and so it's a real mix of comic book professionals, behind the scenes types, and also super fans, just people who are really into it and love having an outlet and being able to write about the things that they really enjoy. And I'm just happy that people like to read about it, because that's just really encouraging.
Enough said.
and then I wanted to give you a plug on this here,
Oh
the
yeah.
DC comic style guide that you wrote a wonderful introduction for. How amazing is this project? I
Well,
mean, like this was a mythical thing.
it's funny. It's breaking. The news I can share here, because we just broke it and just wrote about it on the site before we went. We went live here. Is that it was nominated today for an Eisner. And yeah, I know. And I just like,
Like there's like
yeah,
all
isn't
these,
it amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
it's such
and like
it's a testament to Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and the way the whole thing came. Yeah. I mean, who's a wonderful guy, and just a sweet, sweet guy. And the way the whole thing kind of came about was, um, I had a sense that something was coming. I'd had a, it's something that had been beating the drum. Rob Kelly, podcaster and writer for the site, and does a bunch of different things. You're probably familiar with him, but co-founder of the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Mhm.
Rob's been a longtime contributor to the site, and he really, for years, was beating the drum to get this published, and I kind of picked it up from him. and made it sort of a regular
Mm.
or occasional thing. And then I had this, when DC last year, or was it last? Yeah, I guess it was last year, when they announced that they were doing the style guide variant covers. I'm like, I wonder, that's not, that doesn't
Close.
feel like doesn't feel like an accident to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then sure enough, the word, it was funny because the word came out. The way I found out about it was Walt Grogan, who is one of our regulars, great, wonderful guy. It's funny. I say these people are wonderful. I've never met most of them. I've maybe
Yeah.
Zoomed with them or emailed, but there's, with a few exceptions, Paul lives nearby, so he and I get together for lunch and we see each other. We shop at the
Oh,
same comic
nice.
book shop, Oh Yeah
Nice.
Comics in
Okay.
Harrison, New York, which is co-owned by Franco, and his artistic partner Art Baltazar. They co-own the chain along with a guy named Mark Hammond and Christy Blanche in Muncie, Indiana. And so I see Franco on a regular basis too. So that's really cool. I like that part of it. But some of the people, like Peter Bosch, is another great contributor. I know I'm getting off point here. He lives in Los Angeles, and if we passed each other on the street, I don't think we'd recognize each other. It's just kind of a funny thing. But he's one of the most prolific people we've got. But going back to the style guide, was Walt saw that, I think it was Evan Shaner, Doc Shaner, had put on Instagram that there was a house ad in one of his comps for an upcoming comic, and in it had that the book was coming last year, that it was going to come later in 2024. And so Walt's like, "Hey, Dan," and it was like 10:30 at night. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm in my shorts. I'm like watching whatever I'm watching, getting ready for bed, and I look at my phone, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is real." So I run downstairs and I get online and I bang out the thing and I boom, 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 boom. And between that, the site exploded right then and there. And the next day was one of the, I think maybe it was certainly in the top 5 traffic days in the history of the site. The response was phenomenal. And I had gotten involved in it by accident, really, or just by happenstance. The Hamish Smythe, and the folks at Standards Manual, they're in Brooklyn. I'm in New York. I live north of the city, so I was interviewing them and kind of getting involved with it that way. And I ended up, since they're in Brooklyn, I went to their studio and saw what they were doing. And the next thing I know, I'm kind of getting involved as a technical advisor and helping them to kind of, put the book together and give them, I know, but because I couldn't help myself. And
Oh my
it's really what it
gosh,
is. I mean,
that's
I
so
have very little,
amazing.
I have very little self-control. And so I'm just like sitting there thinking, hey guys, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so the next thing I know, right? So the next thing I know, there's this whole back and forth, and they're sending me ideas, and I'm sending them ideas, and then
Nice.
last year, it was
Wow.
almost a year to the day. Almost to the year from today. I was May, I think it may have been May 16th. My son and I went to the Rolling Stones show at the Meadowlands. And I'm waiting for, and I already figure it's going to be a good night, assuming that the Stones weren't going to die on stage. And I hadn't seen them in decades, but I figured this is probably the last time. My son had never seen them, so we went together.
That's cool.
And I'm sitting there we got there early, of course, waited for the show to begin, and I checked my email because the stadium was maybe a quarter empty. And I looked down, and they asked me if I wanted to interview Jose Luis Garcia Lopez for the book. So I'm like, is this one of the greatest days of my life right now? Maybe. Is it? And so of course I respond, yeah, absolutely. And then that part of it took off also. So it is, I have to say, very, very strange to me that my name is on the cover, that I'm listed as a technical advisor, that I was able to actually be a part of the production, and now to see it get nominated for an Eisner,
Yeah.
it's hard to get
Yeah.
my head around. So it's
Yeah.
on a
Next time we
personal
talk to you, might have
level.
a trophy in the back.
Well, I don't, you
Yeah.
know, I don't know if it'll go like that, but I'm look, whatever it is, I'm just glad the experience was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're
And
like the
getting
chief
it.
promoter of that's
Well,
so you earned.
well, once, I mean, I kind of do that if there's something I really love, I will beat the drum just over and over and
Yeah.
over for something in hopes that it'll catch fire. I've been fortunate that a few other projects have kind of come to fruition. I don't know if I don't know if I don't know if the drum beat has made a difference, but I know it hasn't hurt. So
Yeah.
it's always fun to see something like that. I mean, like facsimile editions, for example.
Yeah.
That's something that we've gotten to the point where we cover that like a beat now, like it's an actual beat.
Yeah.
What's coming, what are the what's coming, what do we want to see, encourage. And again, I have no idea if there's any connection there, but I am happy that there have been a number of books that I've suggested that have ended up being on lists and what have you. I did have one publisher tell me that they did pay attention to a list I had put together and were aware of some of the things that I had suggested, and not that it took a genius to do any of this. It's just
Yeah.
it's nice to have the thing about the site is I have that voice, and the people at the site have that voice, and
Yeah.
I have to admit part of it is intoxicating, but mostly it's just on a daily basis. It affords me to write about things that I love. And if I really, really want to get into something, I'll hammer away at it and hammer away at it. And I'm very competitive. So like I like to really get my arms around something. And so like with facsimile editions, I now have relationships with the different publishers about, when they've got news to break, we have arrangements set up, and it's a mutually beneficial deal. And it's really taken off for DC with the Treasury editions that they're doing, and now they're going crazy with the 11x17 comics and all that stuff that they're doing. I mean, I love it. I mean, that kind of stuff
Yeah.
is like comic
Absolutely.
to me.
Absolutely. Especially those 11x17 editions, because almost everybody wants a lot of those now, especially some of the big titles.
Yeah. Well, I put together a piece of if they were going to do a bunch of facsimile editions in the 11x17 size, because it's a natural
Mm-hmm.
to me. It's like, okay, if obviously it's sold, they put it out there, they put it out there for the first part of Hush 2. They then quickly said, I guess they saw the first returns. They quickly said, we're going to do the whole series. And then the next thing we know, there's this WIP thing, which is basically an artist edition for a single issue. And then the natural question then, because I get greedy, I'm like, well, if they're going to do that, why don't they do this? And then it's like becomes, well, facsimile editions are the perfect. I mean, imagine an 11x17 copy of Batman number 251.
Oh.
Imagine, Marshall Rogers art at that size. Imagine Action Comics number 1 at that size. I mean, the closest we've gotten, which had been great, was the old fantastic famous first editions, which were Treasury sizes. They were a little bit bigger than Treasuries. I would love to see them come back, but in the 11x17. The only difficulty with the 11x17 is finding bags and boards. So I think
space in your shelf.
And space, finding it. But the next big thing that I'm really looking forward to is, so I am hopeful that that'll happen. But the I'm looking forward to right now is when we talk about artist editions, the Neil Adams artist edition, which is coming out very soon.
I wanted to talk about Neil Adams.
Because
you go back.
Adams is,
you interviewed him fairly early on. You got to interview him fairly early on.
Adams was sort of there were a few big time comic book names who gave me and the site a lot of encouragement early on, and they didn't have to. I don't know why they did. I am forever grateful. Uh, Neil Adams was one of them. Paul Levitz was another. Mark Waid was another. And the three of them really were instrumental in various ways in me kind of getting my head around what I wanted to do. And Paul will still, it's funny, I tease him, I call him my favorite professor, because he'll sometimes send something to me that he'll correct me on. And it's like getting a note from your professor. It's like, I feel like I let him down. It's like, oh no,
Oh
I
no.
screwed up in front of Professor Levitz. But yeah, I interviewed Adams early on. I was able to get into his studio, and that was crazy. His studio was or still is actually. The company's still very much active, but his studio was in Manhattan, not far from where my day job. So I went there and sat down, and for like 3 hours he held court, and he answered every question that I had, and was expansive, and all the entire time he's drawing. I mean, I don't think he could ever stop drawing, and he drew until he absolutely couldn't draw any longer, sadly. But
Yeah.
then I had another opportunity a couple of years later, and I stayed in touch. Occasionally, looking to see if maybe I could get another interview. But then he started doing guest columns, and that was like that took things to a whole lot. I'm like, holy crap, Neil Adams, who I've loved since early childhood, whose art has meant the world to me, has changed my life, has had an incredible impact on me as a comic book fan and as Batman fan specifically.
Yeah.
To be in a position to not only just talk to him but then publish him was really something else. And so there was one interview that we did where they did Neil Adams month for a bunch of variant covers that he did back in 2016. And I went to his studio. We spent 3 hours on a Saturday morning, and he went over each individual cover that he had done. There were 30 of them.
Wow.
And each one was based on a previous famous cover that he had done back in the 70s, the 60s, 80s, whatever. And he answered every question that I had. And he went like step by step. And also because they were all inked by superstar big name inkers, he would talk about the difference between seeing P. Craig Russell ink him versus, say, Bill Sienkiewicz or Kevin Nolan.
Yeah.
And it was and he had his own opinions about it, and what he liked and what he thought could have been done differently.
He seemed really intelligent.
Yeah.
Highly intelligent.
Like a piercing intelligence in the way he talked and his delivery.
Yeah, and it was impossible. You think that it's hard to get a word in edgewise with me. I'm nothing compared to him. He would just expound. he would keep going, and I'd be trying to let me follow up, Neil. Hold on a second. But the fun thing is that he knew that, so you could, after a while, I had enough of a rapport with him that I could break his onions about it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, all right, Neil, can I get a word in here? But we had established that kind of level of trust, and I have a wonderful relationship with his family, which again, I'm going to stop here for anybody who's listening. I don't mean, when I talk about this stuff, I don't mean it to come off as self-centered or arrogant or anything like that. I'm always worried about that whenever I talk about myself in the site.
Mhm.
It's just I love this stuff so much,
Yeah.
and to be able to talk about the experiences of people I've been able to meet, the real pinch me moments my wife says I live a charmed bat life, because all of these things that I've been able to experience in my adult life that as a child I could only imagine, and really and couldn't really, because I didn't imagine the internet back in 1974. But it was, I mean, it's, so, I mean, this whole notion that that I could have this connection was really something that still to this day, I'm deeply thankful for, and never, ever, ever take it for granted. And it's,
can we talk about that? Like your childhood a little bit about your like where your love, because you're famously a Batman guy. I before the show, like, you're the patron saint of Batman. So like, can you
Jeez, that's a lot of pressure, but
talk
thanks.
about where that started? And
Sure.
I know, but
The
somebody's got to be
the
it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
well, no, I really appreciate that. That's very sweet. I don't think I've earned that title, but I nevertheless will. I appreciate the sentiment. Um, it started like most people of my generation, which was the Adam West TV show, and it was
Yes.
always there. I was born in the late '60s, and by the time I became aware of it, it was in syndication in New York. So
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have that first memory of some people have of seeing it for the first time or anything. It was just there,
Yeah.
and I just
It was
remember
always there.
loving
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it was always
Definitely.
there, and it just at some point I became aware of it, and at some point it got its hooks into me, and that's where it all began. And it became an obsession early on. Um, and first it was the show, and then
Yeah.
it becomes a little hazy in terms of what was discovered in what order after that. Sometimes I remember it some
Yeah.
ways, sometimes I remember it other ways. Sometimes I go back and check dates and I realize I might have that backwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whereas I used to be more sure of these things, it's more just kind of like a soup. But right around the same, after a period of time. And the other problem is that when you're a kid, you really don't have a sense of time.
Hmm.
What might have been 2 days may have felt like 5 weeks. What may
Hmm.
have been 5 weeks may have felt like a year. So you don't you have no concept of or no way of measuring that when you're a young kid. So in order, roughly, I discovered comic books, and I discovered Migos and Filmation cartoons, and then of course Super Friends on Saturday mornings, and all of everything else
Yeah.
that grows out from that, the toys, the merchandise, the what have you. Migos, obviously, as I've written about a million times, has had a huge influence and impact on me. I mean, I that's something that I do remember. The first time I
Mm.
saw Migos was at my friend Philip Tagliaferri's house, where I was there. His mother babysat for my mother worked. My parents, this is before they were divorced. My mother
Yeah.
worked. I was an AM kindergarten kid, which in those days you were either an AM kid or a PM kid. I was an AM kid,
Yeah.
and so went over to Marilyn Tagliaferri's house, and she looked after me for a few hours, and she had a son, and he was only a little bit older than me. Funny, very very funny guy who turned out to be a comedian by the name of Philip Tagliaferri, or Phil Tag as he's known professionally. Um, but God, was he funny. That's a whole other story. But anyway, I go in for some reason. He was a different school system. I came to the house one day. I had the full day off. He didn't. He had to go to school. And for Christmas, he had gotten, and on his dresser were Batman and Robin. And this were the removable cowl Batman and the removable mask Robin.
Wow.
And it was one of
Okay.
those moments in your life where the skies open and the beam of light hits you, and you're like, everything just changed. Now, this was a mind blower. And I remember when my mom came to pick me up, I'm like, mom, I gotta have Batman, I gotta have Batman. And that eventually became, and then the comics came about. Part of it was that there was a flea market near where I grew up that had a place that sold comics. So I'd get comics there. This would have been around 72, 73. There were also convenience stores and what have you. But one of my earliest memories of seeing an actual comic book on the spinner rack and like just stopping me in my tracks was Batman number 237, which is the Neil Adams cover.
Ooh.
That's the Halloween cover with the red background, and it's one of the greatest.
Yeah.
I still consider it the best Halloween story I've ever read.
Yeah.
And I remembered staring at it and looking up at it and thinking to myself, well, this is different, because as you watch the TV show, and it was, they were, even as a little
Yeah.
kid, I knew they were getting out of the traps. That was
Yeah.
the fun part was
Yeah.
how. I was already aware of
Yes.
the formula at 4 or 5 years
Absolutely.
old, but this was, I was like, this is scary. This is dangerous. I don't know if Batman's going to get out of this. I don't know if Robin is he going to be able to save Robin, and I had to have it. And so that was my first, and that came out in October of 70 or September of 71 or thereabouts. I don't know if that's when I got it or if it had been sitting on the spinner rack for 6 months. I just remember the moment. And there was another comic book that also had a similar impact on me in terms of the cover. Also a How Will Batman Ever Get Out of This type of cover, also by Adams. So that's where the Adams stuff started to kick in. And then a classic case where, the mom always throws out the comic books. My mom didn't. No. My mom didn't do that. That was a whole different thing. I was actually the beneficiary of that because we went to a family friend's, the Sperlings, and she's like, Flo Sperling was her name, and she's like, we have a lot of comic books. My son's upstairs, and in his closet, he's got a big stack of Batman comics. Do you want them? And even then, I'm like, are you sure he wants to give those up? To me, that was like gold. I'm like, are you sure? She's, oh, he doesn't need them anymore. Now I don't know if he knew that. If he wasn't
boy,
he wasn't there. But I'm like,
oh boy,
even sit.
Conveniently, he wasn't there.
Big stack like this, and this was stuff. Now it was stuff from the '60s and the early '70s. So now we're going back to like Carmine Infantino stuff and Shelley Moldoff stuff, and it was mostly Batman. So now I'm starting to get a real feel for the history, and it's starting to kick in there. Now, to this day, I don't know if he has been castigating his mother for the rest of his life. Saying, Ma, I can't believe you threw away my comics or gave it to that Greenfield kid. But that was really how my comic book collection started. And everything just followed from there.
That's a great origin story.
So one of the things I see you post a lot about is the Corgi Batmobile. Are we living in a golden age for collectors?
Oh,
this is amazing.
Aren't we? Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing time to be able to. The companies now that have recognized that there is a market to re-release and in some ways improve upon the originals. The Corgi Batmobile was one of my earliest toys, and it predated the Migos. I actually had that before Migos, so that was like the earliest. And I had a couple of Batman and Robin Soakies, which were like soap bottles.
I've seen those.
Yeah, I had those were my earliest. My early, and I used to take shoe boxes and make a bat cave and bring the bat boat into the bathtub and all of that. I still bring the bat boat into the bathtub. Joke, I'm kidding. But not much. Anyway, but no, yeah. I mean, the fact that Corgi now makes them, the fact that Mego is back, and I hope they're able to work out whatever they need to work out with what's going on with the tariffs. But to be able to have replicas of in mint condition of removable cowl Batman figures and removable mask Robin figures, and it's not just that. There's so many other companies and that's what facsimile editions that are so wonderful is if you have the issue, chances are it's a really expensive issue. You don't ever want to touch it. You just you've had it, you've opened it, but you don't want to mess with it. So getting a facsimile is great. It's great to fill holes in a collection, and they're great for comics you would never ever afford. So it's gotten to the point now where I don't frequently read trade paperbacks anymore. Of modern comics I will. But not of older stories, because I really find that I love the experience of reading a comic book in its original context. And the ads, the letter columns, and all of those things are part of the experience. And so that's one of the things, and that's part of the reason why I love facsimiles. So we're able to get all of these things back that we thought were either gone for good or we're always out of our reach. So yeah, I would definitely call this a golden age.
I just like seeing the comics on newsprint. There's something about that. The older art just looks better on newsprint.
It does
compared to digital.
I agree with that, and there's some, and the feel of the paper and it is, there's that certain kind of, it's not, it's crisp. It's crisper than the comics were back then, and the newsprint it's stronger than the newsprint in the say in the 60s, but it definitely is very similar to that experience, which for $5 to buy a comic book that ordinarily you would never even be able to crack open is it's fantastic.
It is.
Plus, I love
Yeah.
the foil editions. That's not usually my kind of thing. Foil variants and stuff like that. That was never my thing. But I do love them for the facsimiles because I love seeing some of this old art within that kind of funky style. So
Yeah, and it pops.
That is kind of an it's kind of an indulgence, particularly the Treasury editions. That's like it's I just get it because it's like a work of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the Godzilla when they did the facsimile of that, the #1 with the foil. Yeah.
Well, now speaking of Godzilla, what's going on with Batman Meets Godzilla? What's
I knew
going
this was
on,
going to happen.
guys?
I knew
I
this was
had
going
to
to happen.
ask. I mean, I've been waiting for this thing to finish.
All right.
It's a
I got my Godzilla here. This is by the way, like this is like a knockoff Godzilla that is based on the Marvel model for Godzilla. You ever seen this?
Fantastic.
Wow.
These are like impossible to get. They're super rare. But so the story was Batman Meets Godzilla for anyone who wants to know.
I do.
So we assembled a wonderful team of fans to put together basically the comic adaptation of a movie that was never made, that is based on a real treatment that was by William Dozier back in the 60s for a potential movie. Nobody really knows all the details behind what brought the treatment out, and there's all kinds. It's kind of lost to time and mythology, but when I learned of this treatment, I went to the library. I forget which library. It's like one university. I don't know if it's University of Wisconsin. Don't quote me on that. But I contacted them and they're like, sure, here you go. And they'd send me the PDF of the treatment. And then I started reaching out to people to see like artists and to see who would, because there's a lot of Batman and Godzilla fans. So you get this nexus of fans to other comic, and all I had to do was script a comic, which I had never done before. And so, originally it was going to be like 2 issues. I mean, the treatment is it pretty much we covered the treatment in the 2 issues, but we had such a good time. Everybody had a great time. Everybody wanted to come back. I was like, okay, if we do a 3rd issue, who's in? And everybody's like, yeah, we're all in. So I scripted out a 3rd issue. I took my sweet time. I'm not the fastest writer. I don't have the most time to write like I would like to. But I scripted it out, and all the artists turned in their work, and we went into COVID. And for one of my artists, it was it had a bad impact, and it delayed, and then but this and I don't know if this is a fault of mine or just loyalty or what, but I love this guy. I love his work, and really wanted to complete the comic with his work. And it's basically the last 3 pages of the comic. And I have he did the breakdowns, and they look amazing. And he did some, but in addition to his page, he did work for everybody. He was coloring other artist pages. He was submitting ads. He would write makeup ads and for the comic, all this extra stuff he was doing. So his heart was really into it, but he had other things that came up in his life, and so I kept reaching out to him. I tried bribing him. I've sent him presents. I sent his family presents. I reach out to him every few months and check in with them, and I don't think it's going to happen with the artist, unfortunately. So I pulled out all the pages the other day to see just like what shape are they in. Do they just need coloring, or do they need finishing? And the case is they need to be finished, meaning they need to be inked and colored, or they need to be redone. And so I need to find, and anybody listening, if you're interested, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Elliott or to Ian. Reach out to either one of us if you're interested in helping us complete this project. It's just 3 pages. And we have a wonderful layout if you just want to finish what was done. And like there's a part of me that's like, well, maybe I just do like a release it as is, as unfinished, and just like, hey, this is how it ended, and I just put some lettering on it and call it a day. But if somebody wants to help us out, I really want to get it done this summer. I think it's got a really nice trajectory. So everything we're doing in the 3rd issue, we're just basically making up. So the first issue, I mean, we made up stuff in the first 2 issues, but it kind of followed the treatment. It's like they had like this mad scientist that had no connection to Batman. I replaced him with Strange and kind of tried to make it closer to Batman. And we modeled him after Telly Savalas to kind of give it like that Batman TV show feel to it. And so we took some liberties with the treatment, but it kind of adhered to it, the main beats. And and Ian did some amazing work, designing a new Batmobile that was based on a prototype of the Celica that would have been from that era. I mean, like, I really tried to research everything to try to keep it period accurate, and I had, God bless them, I had Batman experts, and I had Godzilla experts to kind of review everything I was writing and making sure that it was true and that like it was accurate. But like Ian did a wonderful job on the Batmobile and the new Batgirl cycle that shows up in the issue 3. And so issue 3 is a lot of fun. We get to we leave issue 2 with Godzilla in a trap. And so we see in issue 3 how Godzilla returns and causes more havoc, and and we get to meet some new characters. I try to lean into the Japanese super teams a little bit. So we introduce this Japanese super team. Fun. We get to see a Batcopter, and let's see. So it's fun. It's written. It's almost completely done. It just needs to be, those last 3 pages need to be done, and the way we end it, like there's like a backdoor pilot for like this Japanese super team, and a Japanese Batman. So like one of the characters we introduce in the first 2 issues is from the Godzilla movies. And so we explore him taking on the role of Batman, and Ken Holthauser did a really wonderful pinup of this Japanese Batman and stuff. So there's a lot of things. I really want to get it out there and get it done. So my goal is to tie it up this summer. I would love to have somebody help. Ian has offered to do it. Ian's doing 2 or 3 more of his own projects. So I would love Ian to come in. I'm not saying he has to, but Ian's got. Ian, have you talked to? I mean, Ian's got his own fan project. So Ian and I did Batman Enigma together.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say, first of all, as far as Batman Meets Godzilla, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I thought that.
Oh, thank you.
That it was no, really, it was one of my favorite projects of that kind of thing. And of course, you can't help but you're looking at that because it came out right around the same time that the Batman 66 comic was either finishing up. There was but what you guys did with it, the passion in it. First off, you got the voice down just right. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. No. And I felt like I was in both of those worlds, and I'm also a big Godzilla fan. So I love, and what I especially loved was beyond the story itself, which was a lot of fun, but all the ancillary stuff like the stickers, and I still have my Batman Meets Godzilla T-shirt. I still have it. I still wear it.
Yeah, I got my T-shirt on. You guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I sent you what? I sent those to everybody. Everybody connected to
Yeah.
the project. And by the way, if
Oh,
you
I
want to
love it.
come and help me finish those 3 pages, I will get you a shirt.
It's a great
And I will
shirt.
get you a shirt of your art if you want me to get a whatever, whatever. Yeah, this. Um, yeah, this is so. Batman is doing the Godzilla dance, and Godzilla's doing the
And Godzilla's doing
Batman.
the bat the
Watusi.
Batusi. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
no, it's
so
just it's
uh,
great. So you have to finish it. You have to. But
all right.
Ian, what else are you
Well, you
working
know,
on
like
these
one of the
days?
things I wanted to.
Well, no, go ahead. Don't I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go on. Eric, you can go ahead. Go ahead. You were
Oh,
finishing.
Eric, go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
So I was going to say one of the things I tried to do was to do Batman and Godzilla figures. I was going to do as a promotion for the issue 3, and one of my artists, Monster Matt, does all this. He does all this, like he makes masks and he makes things like figures and stuff, but like on a bigger scale. And like I try to talk them into making these little figures for me, like they did like in the late '60s. They're just like there's no articulation; they're just posed. And I tried to
Yeah.
get him to do that. It just wasn't his thing. He explored it, and he's like, I can't do it. Because I was like, man, if you could do that, we can get them 3D printed, and they'll be like cereal prizes, and I can send them out like because I love
Right.
doing that kind of stuff. I think it just it
Yeah.
just makes it more real, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds to the whole atmosphere of it. But yeah.
Absolutely.
So Ian, so what are you working on these days?
Aside from my own comic, Codename Hunter, a sci-fi spy thriller, I'm currently working on the first 2 issues with another artist, Ben Affleck's The Batman, which is the unmade Ben Affleck movie. So that's one. The other 2 projects that I'm working on, Zack Snyder's Justice League Parts 2 and 3. So yeah, those are huge productions. I've already written the audio drama script that we're going to be doing with Nuverse Creative. So I'm adapting that into a comic script. So, which is not easy, by the way. I will say that's not easy. So yeah, I've already written the story
So yeah, I
for
forgot about all the radio dramas.
yeah. I've already written the story
So
for parts 2 and 3 of Justice League. Eric and I did do a treatment for Batman Meets Godzilla, for Nuverse Creative as an audio drama,
radio
and
drama, yeah.
yeah, they are gonna put that in production, but it's gonna be a minute because he's got other projects that he wants to do. But yeah, Batman Meets Godzilla is gonna be happening, so don't worry about that.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so there's that, and at
And
some
then
point
the
I would like
Batman
to.
Enigma audio drama.
Yeah, there's another one. We turned that into an audio drama. That's already been done. Now we're just making it a motion comic because the comic book that came out. So yeah, they're gonna be bringing those 2 together. So it's gonna be a motion
I
comic
can't wait to see
with the
that.
audio drama. Yeah, I've already saw the test and it looked fantastic.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I hope at some point to return to the Burton verse, maybe with Eric and Paul Brian McCoy at some point. Because I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We had a great time collaborating with that, and yeah,
Nicolas Cage as the Scarecrow. Perfect. Cast.
Yeah. Funny about that is I had this idea of doing a Scarecrow based on Johnny Depp. And he was going to be a Native American, more of a shaman based kind of out there Burton-esque Scarecrow.
yeah,
And I scripted it out, and it was like 10 pages of an origin story. And I was like, it's just going to take us too long to explain what the Scarecrow is if we go down that. It's like it's much easier if he looks like he's just a lunatic. If we just go
yeah,
with that, and that's kind of it rolled into the Nicolas Cage version. But yeah, I really liked the idea, and I had these ideas about like he has crows that follow him, and all these different ideas, and so I don't know, like maybe we'll include that in like some special edition of Batman Enigma sometime.
yeah. So because I like that idea as well because it was very well thought out and it was very well cleverly done. I was like, oh, it's a shame we didn't do that, but again, we were trying to make sure that the story made
you
sense.
just, sometimes you just got to tell a good story, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And Robert Williams says Riddler. I think that was always going to be on our mind because in our minds he was Riddler, and
Right.
I based my design of him off of the movie Toys, which is from 92, 93, so it was in that era. Because I looked at the poster, I was like, he could be Riddler.
Right. Well, and there was always that talk, and there was the whole that's always been part of the backstory there.
Yeah, absolutely. What was interesting was, I'm sorry, go on. Yeah, what was interesting was this. I only heard about Tim Burton's notes for the third film. I didn't know specifically, what was going to be included. We got a majority of the stuff that was included in that third film, but we also had some new stuff saying, okay, well, there's other plot lines that we had to talk about, the whole Catwoman thing. We also had to talk about the Ice Princess thing. And where's Harvey Dent in this situation?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
my favorite part was Nightwing and getting to do the Nightwing and my version of it, and
that was
our
cool.
version of it, and like I liked how we avoided the trap of a Burton Robin, which I don't think would have ever worked. So I'm proud of what we do as Nightwing, and that might be fun to revisit.
Absolutely.
And we covered a lot of stuff. But is there anything else that you? Sorry, I'm talking over everybody. There's a little bit of delay on my end. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. No, I just had one question. Was like, did you ever hear from DC about what you guys were doing, or did they just kind of let it ride?
No, they
cool.
they
I try to avoid any entanglements with the major publishers.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
Yeah, so we've been left alone, but like we have never tried to make money off of any of this.
Wow.
And it's just, it's out there. This is a fan product. The rights do not belong to us. We are not claiming any rights. This is just for fun.
Not.
And so, but I suspect they read them.
Yeah, I would say so.
There's some
they would need to be aware.
Things I'm like, that seems familiar, but it's, yeah, but no, it's fun, and I tell you, like, for those people that want to be in comics and are looking for a break, fan comic, because you're going to get a lot of exposure and you're going to have a lot of fun, and and you can demonstrate that you can put together a comic. You know how to tell a story, whether you're an artist or a writer or whatever. Being able to pull that off is and the satisfaction of doing it is really worthwhile. So,
absolutely.
So Dan, we covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything you have left to plug? Any secret projects that we should know?
No secret
know about?
Projects,
you want to break here or anything?
No, I mean, the Eisner stuff was plenty of news. It's getting into that good part of the month. It's the middle of the month with solicitations coming. So
yeah,
I think we're going to have in the next week or so. I think we're going to have some things that people really want to see. But yeah, no, recently we did our 85th anniversary. We did Joker Week. We did Catwoman Week, which was great because all of our regulars contributed pieces to that, whether it was art or whether it was written pieces. We will be doing Superman Week this summer, and we will be doing Fantastic Four Week this summer as well.
Nice.
It's gonna be a huge summer.
Be in July. Yeah, it's gonna be great, and I love what I've seen of both so far. So I'm really looking forward to both. Other than that, no. I just the one thing. It's funny. I never get to talk about it. One of my favorite feature at the site, which is retro hot picks, which is something that is it takes a lot going into it, but it's something that I get a lot of gratification out of it, and the readers really seem to like it. So that's always something that I like to point out for people to take a look at, because it's an area where I take it beyond comics and put the comics in the perspective of their time. So if you've never read the column, what we basically do is to take a random. half random. I mean, it's planned out, obviously, but take that week in a previous year, sometime usually in the Silver or Bronze Age, sometimes a little past that, sometimes in the Golden Age, and then write on not only about the comics that we would have gotten that week. Scott Tipton and I, who do our regular hot picks, we do the retro hot picks.
Yeah.
But there's an intro that I put together every week that talks about current events at the time and talks about music and movies and
Mhm.
TV.
Yeah.
So it gives you that sense of, I mean, it's basically, in a way, it's a sort of almost like a commentary track to a facsimile edition. Like, here's the comics that came out.
Yeah.
This is what's really cool, but here's what was going on in the world. And so if you didn't know that, you'll be fascinated to learn it, or you might remember it. You know, if you're of a certain age and it
Yeah.
matches up. A lot of times people say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I was," you know, and oh, I remember that, and blah 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 blah. So I if I'm going to plug anything, I want to plug that, just simply because I love the feature. It allows me to scratch a lot of itches, and it's we've been doing it now for over 5 years, and that's a lot of weeks we've done, but we've got a lot of weeks to cover. So I don't see it going anywhere any decade soon. My goal is to get every week of the Silver, Bronze Age, and
Do you have?
Golden Age done. So that leaves me
Nice.
a ton of
That's
material.
amazing. Would you
Yeah.
ever collect that as a book or anything like that? Any ambitions on that area?
Funny you should say that, Eric, because funny you should say that.
I'm sensing there's something.
No. There's nothing in the works, but it is something I've considered, because I've thought about, you know,
That's perfect for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I have considered it, and there's a few things that I've considered turning into books from the site, because there's enough material there now to do it. You know, you're talking you know, almost 12 years of material, going back to be between what I've written and what others have written. There's a ton of stuff there, and I think that there are two things that I would want to do. One would be the 13th Dimension book of 13 lists. You know, taking some of the best top 13 lists that we've done, and
Yeah.
just put it together in a book, you know, by theme or whatever. But retro hot picks is something that I've actively thought about, and what's held me back is really the time it would take to put it together.
Yeah.
And because you know, the time I work on the website every day,
Yeah.
and I on weekends, and try to squeeze in a minute here and a minute there, and you know, I'm on the train on the way home, I'm writing a story, I'm you know,
Okay.
it's always, so the amount of time that I spend on that, you know, I have thankfully a happily wedded wife who still tolerates me. So, you know, I do like to spend time with my family, and you know, I have a job
Yes.
which is very demanding and long
Yeah.
hours. So if I'm ever fortunate enough to retire, I think that would be something that I would more seriously consider, because I do think that there's
Yeah.
something there that
Yeah.
could be done. So I appreciate you thinking that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it is something that I can see doing. I just don't see it in the near future.
Well, I hope you do it at
Yeah, because
some
the way
point.
you would want to do it would require some more work than you have time
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, and
You wouldn't
there
just
would
want to
also be,
reproduce the website. You would want to.
right. I would have to expand upon certain things. I would have to cut certain things. I would have to make more connective
Yeah.
tissue. There was also, if
Yeah.
part of what makes it work is the videos and the photography. And right now, with what we do, you know, I don't make any money, so there's a very, very wide fair use issue that allows me to publish things,
Yeah.
because there's no I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
putting it on Facebook. You know, but if I were to put it in a book and then charge for the book, then that's complicated. So there are a number of things that would have to be ironed out. But Eric, you picked up right on it, because that's the one in my head that I've said that could be something else.
Everybody's got
So,
one.
anyway.
That's. I think that would
Yeah.
be a good one.
I think it would be fun, just because nothing like that's ever really been done before. You know, that's the catch. And you know, and Scott Tipton is a great partner. The whole thing came about because it was during COVID, and when the comic book industry shut down, I thought, well, what are we gonna do with hot picks? And I started thinking about the basic idea of retro hot picks, but I thought maybe it was a little too much of a cliche. I was like, I don't know. I see people, I see people posting things on Facebook. This came out 50 years ago. I'm like, I don't know. Is this too, And my wife and I went for a walk. It was one of the few things you could do during COVID. We went for a walk down the street, and I turned to her and I said, what do you think I should do? And she right out said, well, I think you should pick a week and do what the comic books that came out that week.
Wow.
I'm like, well, okay, I'm clearly overthinking this because it was so, she's like, it was so obvious to her. So I give her the credit because I would have talked myself out of it. And when she said it, I was like, and then I contacted Scott and I said, Scott, you want to do this? And he goes, oh, hell yeah, that'd be great. And then when we started really, really enjoying it, and I started with the idea of that I'd have the intro, but it was a very, very short intro. It was very much like, this was the president, this is the #1 TV show, this was the top movie. But those started to get repetitive. So I started to get deeper into it and really kind of like researching a lot more of it. And I'm a history buff, so this was really allowed me to scratch a number of itches. As the industry started to wake back up, Scott messaged me, and I was thinking to myself, I hope he wants to continue doing this. And he emails me and says, I hope you want to continue doing this because I'm really enjoying it. And I was like, yes, I do. Let's do this. And then now it's often the intro is longer than the comic book section itself. And every time I think to myself, did I overdo it this time? Did I write to it? I inevitably will get comments of, oh, I love that section, and I love that you. And I'm like, I'm going to keep doing it. Then nobody has said to me yet to scale it back. So I do try to keep it tight, but some weeks are amazing. They're absolutely like particularly if you're talking the late 60s. There's just it was such a period of change and cultural change and political change, and it is really, really remarkable to get into the nitty gritty of a lot of that stuff that you all know was happening, and that it was a tumultuous period and all of that. But to understand that in a given week you could have crazy things all going on at once, and it's no wonder that the country was basically having a nervous breakdown. So it's like I'm having this, Robert Kennedy shot, Andy Warhol shot, 2001: A Space Odyssey comes out all in the same week, and I'm doing this, and then I'm writing about comic books at the bottom. So it's just this really interesting, fun thing. It takes a lot of work, but I absolutely love it. So I wanted to make sure I got.
I hope you do it.
There you have.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
But
Go read the column. The column's out there right now for free.
Yeah. This week was 1985.
And maybe one day we'll see a book and a movie. All right. One of my favorite years.
Yes, the 85.
Yeah.
There are certain years that are better than others for this sort of thing. But next week, I guess I'll break the news now. The next week is going to be 1974. So, and I know definitely some good stuff happened, or interesting stuff, I should say. It's not always good stuff. But anyway, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Oh, Eric, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, I was only going to show how old I was and say that I was born in 74.
There you go. I was born in 67, so it's often fun to write about things when I was either gestating or when I was still crawling. It's interesting to see how much stuff that I love now was there when I was born. It's really whether it's music or television and just following the trends too is it's fun to do. So anyway, thank you for giving me the platform to do that.
Oh, of course, and I'm glad you, Dan, and that you are for coming on.
No, I thank you so much for having me. I know I have a tendency to fill up a room with talk, so I appreciate you indulging me for the last 55 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it's been. And I really, really appreciate it. So
no, it's very rare to have. I'm sorry, it's very rare to have people to talk to about this kind of stuff. Especially on this channel, and I'm always grateful for that.
If you're ever stuck for a guest one week, and you're like, damn, I don't know who we can get. you know, I might be. I'll have to talk to my agent, but I might be available.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
Folks,
Dan, thanks so much
yeah,
for all your
yeah,
Thank you.
promotion of our projects,
absolutely.
Sure.
and we appreciate it. You've been the biggest voice out there promoting all of our fan projects. Uh, you're doing great work with your website,
Thank you.
and you got a great platform, and you use it for good things. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I love to see people like you being a champ, just super fan.
Yeah.
Your patrons say to Batman, all things Batman flow through your website, uh, and you know, like you've had a wonderful life with all these connections with these wonderful artists. We didn't even get into the Steve Englehart stuff, and
Oh
you know, there's
no.
all kinds
Yeah.
of
Oh
stuff we
well,
could
then
come back
that.
and talk about. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
know
come,
what? I would love to do that because that is, you talk about another project. The Tomorrows is finally publishing its illustrated biography of Marshall Rogers, and it's coming out in a couple of months. And this is something that also a project that I was championing to happen anyway.
mm,
And the complete interview with Englehart that I did, where we went issue by issue of his entire Batman run with Marshall Rogers and with Walt Simonson, you know, for the 2 issues at the beginning. Um, Also, another COVID project that turned into something completely different. That entire interview, covering every one of those issues. In some cases, we get down panel by panel. That's all going to be in the book. So
fantastic.
yeah. So I highly recommend that. I've seen, you know, actually, if you go to the site and you type in Marshall Rogers, you'll find a 40-page preview of the book. In general, it's just filled with
I
wonderful
think it
Marshall
releases
Rogers
in
art.
June. It's out there for
Yeah,
pre-order right now.
yeah, it's coming
Um,
out very soon. I can't wait. It's something that's been a long time coming, and I, again, in one of these cases where I just, you know, they asked me if they could use the interview, and I'm like, well, of course you can. You know,
yeah.
this is sure. You know, no, let me think that one over. No, of course you can.
And I was
Uh,
like, my secret plan is working.
Yes, right, exactly.
oh
So
God,
yeah,
it's
to be a part of that, that's another one where it's like,
mm,
you know, anyway,
uh,
another time.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Guys, thank you very much
All
for coming
right.
on again.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
of course.
See ya.
And folks, check out the 13th Dimension. Well, that's gonna be it for us
Yes.
tonight, folks. I'm Ian Miller, and this has been Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. Have a good night.